Well, she drove all her money out with Southern Trust. I put a little boy aboard a Greyhound bus, leaving Louisiana for the Golden West. Down came her tears from her happiness. Her own little son named Johnny B. Good was gonna make some motion pictures out of Hollywood.
You feel like the youngest guy there? I am. Hello, Art Fein. Art Fein's Poker Party coming in from Hollywood. Some real special guests. We'll start in ascending order. We'll start with Domenic Priore. Dom, haven't seen you in a while. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for
Dominic's
inviting me.
World-renowned expert on a lot of things, including Andrew Loog Oldham and the Rolling Stones. So we're going to talk. He's going to be peppering us with a lot of questions. By the way, you just went to England on the Smile tour with Brian Wilson.
Yeah, I just was there for the first couple of shows, and it was pretty amazing. Sounded really clean.
And was the thing put together? Was Smile put together the way you imagined it?
Exactly.
So I know every Smile fan or Smile fantasizer has his own order. Was it pretty close to yours?
Based it on a list in my book. So.
Brian followed your book.
No,
great.
They didn't. Brian didn't follow my book. Excuse me. No,
Yeah.
the people out there who are making their little DVDs of it or whatever, whatever the technology is these days. 10 years from now, when people are watching the show.
Yeah, we won't know what a DVD is. Okay, well, thanks very much. Nice to have you here, Paul Bodie.
Yeah.
It's good to have you here for what we call the rematch.
It's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere.
You and me and Andrew.
It's good to be here, and it's good to be
Did
anywhere.
it 12 years ago. Okay, nice to see you.
That's a good point.
And next to me, I got Andrew Loog Oldham. Andrew, welcome to the show. I haven't seen you in a decade, and it's nice to have you here. Andrew, of course, was the founding manager of the Stones and Immediate Records and a lot of other stuff. A lot of stuff that we covered on a previous show. Actually, I watched the show. It wasn't as peculiar as I thought it was, and it was neat, and a lot of things, a lot of information flying around. A lot of the standard first questions. By the way, the first question I asked you was, what was the first record you bought? And you said it was, I think, Perry
Como Magic Moments,
Yeah.
because it was a double A and B with Catch a Falling Star.
Yeah, I don't remember that being, I guess it was here too, I don't know. It's like 2 records. What about going to concerts, rock and roll concerts? Did you go to something early on? Like in the 50s, did you see Buddy Holly or anybody like that came through?
No, I was thinking about this last night. I was kind of governed by school times as I was in a boarding school. So the first one could have finished it off for me. It was Bill Haley.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but then we did get to see, then there was Eddie Cochran, there was Gene Vincent.
There was, and you
the
saw
Everly
them?
Brothers, yeah, the Everly Brothers, Sam Cooke, Little Richard, Johnny Running Bear Preston.
Just brilliant.
Okay, and
Who wrote Running Bear?
Woo, don't know.
J.P.
Yeah,
Richardson?
Big Bopper.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's on the background.
Yeah, he's
Hunga.
Yeah,
He's one of those
yeah.
guys, and they had to pull the record back a year because of the proximity. It came out, it was recorded, obviously, when he was alive in '59, so they held it back a year because of respect or something, crap like that.
Johnny missed him on stage.
Yeah.
Your early years are covered in your book, Stoned 1, which was released about 2 years ago.
Yes.
And here's the new one. Oops, yes, Stoned 2.
Two Stone.
Two Stones, sorry. And that is freshly out and not in America?
Not in America, in Canada and Europe, and at a website near you.
And they're both chronological. So the first one
Yeah.
is up to and meeting the Stones and getting involved with them.
Yeah, the first year, actually up until, as everything really still revolves around what the Beatles did, is up to the time that in early '64 when the Beatles came to America and once again changed the name of the game for us.
Okay.
So it ends with that and Marian Faithfull and us standing nervously in the wings waiting for our turn.
Actually, before let's cut to the go back right now. When I saw you a year ago at a ABCO party, somebody said, "There's Andrew Oldham." I said, "Really? Where?" You know. So it was you. I didn't recognize you at all, and we had met 11 years earlier at that time. And you were kind of fuller and a little more full of stuff, I guess. You were
Full of stuff.
Yeah.
Is a very good way of putting it.
I mean, you were operating on various things, I guess, that were going on within you.
I was on, let me see, this would be 92 or 93?
92, yeah.
Yeah, you know, that was the last five-year run of many things before one just decided that one wanted to live.
So you actually straightened yourself out?
I straightened myself out in 1995, which is the preface of Stone deals with that, and then parts of Two Stone, deal with it all, where, I decided to have my turn and do as much as most people think most of the Rolling Stones did themselves, but take it in one body. And I did a very good job. I had, a 20-year great run, and then, 5 years of finding new bottoms to bottom out on before we said no.
The 5 years of bottoming out were the early 90s or the post-95?
Yes.
Let's take a look at you in Fein Fettle in 1992 on a show, about 45 seconds. Take a look up at the monitor. We'd like to also hear some, in the studio, we'd like to hear it. Let's take a look at a roll-in of Us.
I feel like John and Paul.
Dan. The earlier Stones albums were just loaded with Andrew Loog Oldham stuff, poems by and produced by and managed by and all that kind of stuff. And was that inspired by Phil? Because he.
Well, most certainly, because Phil was an inspiration. Probably Phil, Berry Gordy, Brian Wilson, and Bob Crewe are the ones who taught us about independent deals. But it influenced us greatly. Phil Spector was the first, man who showed you could be a star as well.
Yeah.
Let's face it, fuck the sound. I'm sorry. Yeah. Can we say that again? Never mind the sound. The wall of noise with the Rolling Stones.
So he was actually a role model. More than the other three. Yeah.
Sure.
And I remember that in late.
Not even more than the other three. Bob Crewe, I'm afraid, even though from the East Coast, has to be up there. Bob Crewe was a great producer, even though Phil, I say the fag.
Wow.
Pirates of Pasadena.
Wow, that was cool, man.
Oh man, you look so much better right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're thinner, and I like the glasses more too than the last.
Well, that's all.
The glasses are really, really, really better than
You're
the last.
kind of bloated in that one.
Bloated is the word. Yeah. But we all have a choice. Whether or not you're as excessive as I am or not, all you young rock and roll guys over 51 out there know that the filter system's changed, whether it's one sherry and a joint on the weekend or a grappa and 5 lines before breakfast.
Which were you on that one?
Huh? Oh, that was grappa in the boot of the car outside the studio and on the road here. At least I follow the California law. It was in the trunk.
I think Domenic has some Stones questions for you.
Rolling Stones? No, I was actually going to ask about Immediate Records.
Go ahead.
And the Poets. I heard this is a really good group. They're on the Rubble compilation now, and a friend of mine was telling me that there's some really good songs like Now We're Through. And
that was on Decca.
That was on Decca?
Yeah.
But were you involved with that?
Well, I recorded everything of their output that was on Decca, and basically the one and only hit. The couple of records they cut for me for Immediate Records, I didn't produce. Mm-hmm. Actually, the guy who produced the first one was Gary Glitter.
Oh, okay.
And I just loved the Poets. They were just
Is that You Blew a Good Thing? You Blew a Good Thing?
No, the songs I have listed here are Now We're Through, and That's the Way It's Gotta Be.
That's the way, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They were both Decca, on Decca in '64.
Proceed. You got a list?
Proceed. I have a list here. Then I guess on Immediate, it says here you produced Twice as Much, sort of a Simon and Garfunkel meets Phil Spector.
I don't know who that's being kind to, them or the Everly Brothers. It was. The Twice as Much were also a kind of shiver, shiver, shiver after effect of Pet Sounds, in that Pet Sounds was still reverberating in the very idea of it, and I think that's what prompted. I did a lot of that with Mort Schumann, of Twice as Much with. And Twice as Much were just. That was the day when you can say, pluck 2 people and go, you'll do. This is what we're doing. And we had a couple of hits. One with a cover of "Sitting on a Fence," the Mick and Keith song, and then one of their songs, which was very tough in those days, unless you were Paul and Barry Ryan, with "Daddy's Money," to duplicate 38 people in an orchestra.
You were involved with Pet Sounds and promoting Pet Sounds in some way?
No,
there's all
really,
kinds of stuff that
you hear, but you don't know.
Yeah, you hear, but NME was just loaded with promo for Pet Sounds.
Well, I did. I took an advertisement for it, but I did not have the publishing or any interest in them at the time. It was just a way of bringing attention to the record that, given the nature of the record and not knowing what it might or might not do, outside the single potential of God only knows. You knew that such was the nature of the record business that EMI would give up on it on 3 weeks if it wasn't following Help Me Rhonda. So I just decided to do a little an advertisement in the NME to attempt to help it along, as I've done for things like the Mamas and Papas and the Loving Spoonful and other things, other American beauties that we've loved.
Well, I don't want to commandeer this whole show here, but there was this Peter Whitehead, a filmmaker, and he had done Charlie Is My Darling, the Rolling Stones, and he also did one in late '66 called The Beach Boys in London.
Did he?
Yeah, it was for the BBC. And then also Tonight, Let's Make
I know
Love in
that
London.
because I paid for it.
Yeah, those 3 films are all, and I mean, it seems like you were surrounding or near those films in some way.
I produced Charlie's My Darling.
Yeah.
I paid for a large portion of the soundtrack was on Instant Records of Tonight, Let's Make Love in London. Instant, which was an offspring of Immediate Records, and I had no idea he did the Beach Boys.
Yeah, it was, I found that when I was researching
Really?
the Smile book. Yeah, it was the Beach Boys in London, and Marianne Faithfull did the voiceover. And your
Did
name is
she?
on the credits too, yeah.
Well, I mean, could have been.
Yeah.
My own chronology, for people watching, Andrew discovered the Stones and managed them for a long, long time. What was the year you stopped managing them? So.
67.
And then you sold it to, you sold out, so to speak. You moved the contract, the management situation and publishing and everything over to, what, Alan Klein?
Well, the records, the publishing had already been, was already with Alan. The records came later, and the management was kind of a movable, unwritten feast that I don't think anybody wants to lay claim to. Alan will go, no, man, I didn't manage them, because that has the implication that he took them from me, which is an implication Alan doesn't deserve.
Okay. And then, so that was 67. Is that when Immediate Records started?
No, Immediate Records started in 1965 with when we were lucky enough to get well, not that lucky, we should have more than the UK. For the UK and Air, Hang On Sloopy.
By?
The McCoys.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah.
the hit version.
And so, as everybody in those days, even Wes Farrell, you started a label, you had a hit. And we were lucky enough to start with Hang On Sloopy, 3 record, Nico, and then another record produced by Jimmy Page. And Hang On Sloopy went top 10. Then we had a kind of cold period until Mick Jagger produced Chris Farlow. And then we bought the Small Faces from Don Arden and Decca. And that was 67, yes, is when Immediate started to come to actual permanent prominence for a couple of years.
Is Ogden's Conflict was your record?
On
well,
Immediate,
I'm
yeah.
saying your record, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
You were involved with that one.
That was the first record that the Small Faces made for us.
Everybody loves that record so much.
Don't they?
Yes.
Paul, you were talking about, Paul and I and Andrew were at South by Southwest
Yeah.
in March, like we go every year, and you go once in a while.
The first one I'd been to.
Oh, is that right?
Highly enjoyable.
Yeah. So what you went to the Q&A question
Yeah.
section?
Oh,
You
yeah.
were going to say something about it.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, who played on the Chris Farlow records? I mean, do you remember who played on those?
Session musicians.
Oh, just session
Yeah.
guys?
I mean, it would have included John McLaughlin.
What, the jazz guy, John?
yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Andy White.
On drums?
Yeah. And when we couldn't get him, Ronnie Verrill, jazz drummer. Yeah, the regular hands, everybody that were on the P.P. Arnold records, the Twice as Much records, the Chris Farlow records, in the main, all guided by our own Jack Nietzsche, Art Greenslade.
Because
the arranger.
the Chris Farlow things are pretty amazing sounding.
They are, and that's all down.
'cause-
Mick would produce those.
So he did.
Oh, Mick did those, yeah.
Oh man, because I was listening. Because I have they put out the double CD thing of them.
Well,
Like
then
that.
therefore you've got to look as to which ones he produced. He produced
Yeah.
probably about 12 of them. Then there's about another 4 that should be Mick, Keith, and I. Then there's different people like Mike Hurst, Michael Darbo. There's even one in there from Steve Marriott and Ronnie Lane. I mean, we had a very nice pool of producers in our own little shrill building, I suppose.
No, man, but it was great sounding stuff. Because
Thank you.
I'd hear it on the, Out of Time they played over here, the summer of '66.
Chris Farlow's out of town?
Yeah, Chris Farlow's Out of Time.
Well, if you listen to Metamorphosis, you can hear the same track.
Yeah, same track with Jagger singing. Yeah.
That's right. The reference vocal for Chris Farlow. In fact.
But man, it's an amazing song.
It is, certainly is.
Yeah.
And the record, he
Oh, no, he
trying
was-
to get, you know, an English brass section. I mean, you know, Motown being the bar for that record. You know, to get a horn section sounding like one rhythm chunk, and Mick really pulled it off.
Yeah.
I think it's a shame he didn't later.
You know what's odd? You know what's odd about that the CD that I have is that he does a Dylan song.
It's All Over Now, Baby Blue.
Like he does it like the Four Tops would do it. Yeah. And I listened to it, I said, what the heck? Yeah. And oddly enough, they said about Levi Stubbs when he did Reach Out, I'll Be There, he was imitating Dylan.
He was doing Dylan, yeah.
Yeah, I did the Baby Blue.
Yeah. I mean, I dug it.
Well, do you know the one Smokey Robinson Miracles cut where he's essentially imitating Levi Stubbs? I mean, come around here.
Really?
I mean, it's just a judgment call here, but I mean, it's not at all like a Miracles
Well, it's probably
record.
written by the guys who wrote Reach Out, I'll Be There.
Yeah,
I
probably.
think.
But, okay. All right. So you were started out in fashion in some sense, right? In the fashion world before you got on the rock and roll thing in 60 or 61 or something like that?
Yeah. In that the pop business that was in England then with Cliff Richard, Billy Fury, Marty Wilde was basically just an imitation game, you know, where these, the only part that was pop is once the people started singing. It was just an imitation, you know, Sea of Love with Marty Wilde would be covered, Billy Fury would cover Halfway to Paradise. Cliff became kind of self-contained because of songs by people like Lionel Bart and mainly going for more English writers. But I mean, Marty Wilde was not a bad writer either. But that was an unexportable mode. I mean, you couldn't give away British pop except things like Acker Bilk, the odd freak, Jackie Dennis. Do you remember him?
No.
La-di-da. He covered.
Russ Hamilton, I remember.
Russ
right?
Hamilton.
Yeah.
And Laurie London.
Laurie London. And I think, and apart from that, the orchestras. So again, that's another key day. You know, the reason there should be a monument to Brian Epstein is because he managed to get the Beatles a recording contract. You know, I mean, otherwise we may not have been in Austin. We certainly.
See, you're right about that. You're right about that because it never would have happened. None of this stuff would never happen.
Wait, a good question is where does Joe Meek fit into this mix? Because Telstar is like 61.
62.
Yeah, but Telstar. Oh no, it's Apache that was a hit by somebody else, Jorgen Tillman.
Jorgen Ingemann, I believe, from Holland, and who was covering the Shadows.
Count. You know?
The Shadows, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So it's a Seattle song.
Wow.
Written by Jerry Lorden.
I'll be darned.
In America, people heard the Jorgen Ingemann version, but
Yeah, I
not
mean,
the Shadows.
but-
Shadows is a better
Shadow's
version.
But with all due respect to Joe Meek, he unfortunately that record has to join in just the one-off freaks like Frank Ifield and things like that because you know there was nothing else there.
He didn't follow it up with American Success. Maybe Have I Ever the Right after the Beatles.
Yeah, but then you're just looking at somebody as a producer, you know, and if you die that early, you get a lot of mantles hung on you that you may or may not deserve. You know?
Well, in a field of unproductive exporters, he was doing pretty good, I would imagine, Joe Meek.
Actually, yes, you're quite right. 2 hits, but I mean, you shouldn't have shot the landlady. But this is becoming a producerial habit.
But it was over by 1967 anyways.
It came back in 2000.
Oh, rock and roll was over by 59, you know that.
Well, you're rock and roll.
No, rock and roll. The stuff-
66 is the agreed upon year, you know.
Is that right?
Ask Greg Prevost, he'll tell you.
I don't know him, but 59, no more Sparkle Tones records. There's really nothing to do.
I thought it ended like when American Bandstand started in 58, Art.
Well, 57, and
This is
you're
our
right.
usual argument.
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
can follow it.
So,
I don't know.
was there a bandstand show? Was there a kids dancing show in England?
There was, on the afternoons, on Rediffusion, called Cool for Cats.
Yeah.
And hosted by, as usual, somebody who also did the news 2 hours later. And with an American dancer called Peppy, who was, you know, managed by Tom Springfield, Dusty Springfield's brother, that kind of relationship. Anyway, that was your only actual dance program.
It didn't penetrate the society like American Bandstand.
No, not at all. It was on a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon
Did 6
when
5
kids were
Special?
on their way home.
6-5 Special had some sort of impact at all then? I mean, what was...
Not on me.
Yeah, it was not really that rock and roll. I mean, because I'd heard...
You know, because it was trying to. You must have skiffle. There is only skiffle and trad jazz. When we knew about Eddie Cochran, you know, we knew about you know all this. You know, Thomas Wayne, give me tragedy. You know, like
Whose label was that?
Fernwood.
Whose was it? Scotty Moore's label.
Scotty Moore.
Really? Was
Yeah,
it?
that was. He got a congratulatory letter from the Colonel saying you're on your way, and then he wasn't. That was the only Fernwood hit.
Jack Scott.
No, Carlton.
Yeah, but I mean that's another type of kind of. I mean, what a
guy! Oh my God!
I mean, in awe of the John Garfield, awe of this guy on vinyl, right? I mean, really moody. And then they're bunging at us saying, no, Lonnie Donegan. Not that I, Kenny Ball, and things like that. So 6-5 Special was like really awfully homogenized. But we did have Oh Boy and
that was going to
Jack
mention Oh Boy.
Yeah.
But wasn't Jack Good involved in 6-5 Special and then Oh Boy?
Maybe at the beginning he was. Yeah.
He may have been a little bit constrained by the production values of the group of 6-5 Special. And then moved on. And then he went to after Oh Boy. He went to America and did Shittig once the Beatles broke.
Yeah. And then brought back PJ Proby to England, which did America a favor.
He's still kicking around, isn't he?
He was good when he was at the Sea Witch.
He's in the Buddy, the whole of the London's West End is just tribute shows.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he was in the Buddy Holly tribute show, and he just comes out and sings his hit.
And he was in the Elvis show in '79 when I was there.
Was he?
Yeah. So he's going from one. Maybe he'll be in the Little Richard show next.
Well, I went to visit him. I had to. I mean, I hadn't met him then, because he was with Kim Fowley. But I went to visit him, backstage when he was in this Buddy Holly show, and his dressing room was full of pictures of land, and really snaps of land. He says, "This could have been mine." It was very, very strange. But anyway, I mean,
Wasn't he living in a castle or something? I heard that he.
Which year?
He was really good friends with Sharon Shealy. Who says, "Oh yeah, PJ's living in a castle or something like that."
See, I know this woman who knows Sharon Shealy called her name was PJ, and she also knew PJ Proby. Oh. Yeah, she told me.
I once went to Rel Donner's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the west side of Chicago, and he had pictures of Elvis everywhere, and he had a Cadillac up on jacks because he couldn't afford the insurance. But this was like '64 when it was way past his prime.
Oh yeah.
Rel Donner, the only star to emerge from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I waited in vain
only
for
rock and roll guy.
Yeah, well, a couple of blues guys maybe. But
don't get me started.
Where is Al Cooper from?
New York City.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Long Island, I think, or one of those. I think he was a classmate or a Simon and Garfunkel.
He doesn't admit he grew up with Bob Gaudio.
Art doesn't count as Shadows of Night, because it's after 1950.
Well, actually, you're right. I'm talking. Wait, the
right.
thing is, I'm talking about the rock and roll era. See.
What about the New Colony 6?
You're talking about post '59.
How about the New Colony 6?
59 was
friends with
something
Ronnie
else.
Rice? Is that true?
The post '59 doesn't matter. It's up to '59
okay.
when it died in '59. So, anyways, you're back in fashion stuff. So, how did you just spring out of it when you saw the Stones? You were not interested in music in a production or management way.
I started off in fashion because it was the British pop business. It was
all mixed up with the music.
No, it wasn't mixed up at all with the music. People in fashion like jazz, Ronnie Scott's and jazz clubs and things like that. But Mary Kwan had a salon in New York. Vidal Sassoon cut hair in New York, and this was the engaging business to be in. It was tied up with Vogue and David Bailey and people like that, while British pop was in the condition that I described it in. Then I moved slowly over from that into publicity. Did the Johnny Running Bear Preston tour, did the Sam Cooke, Little Richard, Chet Harris tour, did a few other tours for Don Arden, and as Tommy Rowe, Chris Montez and the Beatles, that was an Arthur Howes show, and I was at the same time doing the publicity from February of '63 through May of '63 for the Beatles. So I did Please Please Me, From Me to You, and then the first few weeks of Cilla Black and Billy J. Kramer, and How Do You Do It by Jerry and the Pacemakers. Then I kind of went to Brian and said, and I hoped he wasn't listening, and he wasn't. I said, there's this group I'm interested in, and he wasn't interested, so I went and found Eric Easton as a co-partner because I had gone to see the Rolling Stones, and suddenly my easygoing life as a press agent was over, and I had a job to do.
Weren't you into all this pretty young? I mean, when you mentioned Johnny Preston and people like that, we were talking about really early '60s, unless they were still touring in '63 or something like that.
No, this was very early. I think Johnny Preston was like 62. When was Running Bear? 59, no?
Yeah, 59.
60.
No,
because
59. I heard it in 59.
All right, 59.
No, that was one of my first jobs in 61 because I had left school in 60 being told that I may do well but not there.
But in 60 you were 16, so you started when you were 17. Wow.
Wow. So wait a minute. So you actually, were you ever in the same room with Sam Cooke?
Yes.
See, now that's heavy.
Oh, look. You know, it's an amazing
Just recently.
segue, just recently.
Oh.
Okay? That's, now and then, honey.
That was from the Sam Cooke party last year.
But you were in the
I was, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, and Little Richard, Sam Cooke. I mean, and you had no idea at that time that these gentlemen generally did not play to white audience, let alone teddy boys with the brothel creepers of the shoes.
Yeah.
And the basically zoot suit London, style.
But they were playing to that audience?
Oh, and how
would've thought-
that was the audience.
I can understand Little Richard. I kind of thought, Sam Cooke would be the supper club crowd.
No, Sam Cooke. See, don't discount Sam.
Well, no, you can, but I mean that's not the reason. I mean, you wouldn't let somebody who had pop hits would not get into a supper club unless George Raft was on the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he would do cinema tours. I mean, you played cinemas, as you know.
Cinemas.
Yeah, by virtue of the fact that he was on RCA and was having pop records. I mean, the fact that he had this conflict with gospel nobody would know about. How much of a conflict is it?
I hear two different stories about the conflict. I mean,
So do I.
Yeah.
Then I asked Lou Adler about it.
Yeah.
And he said he just read the newspapers and wrote a commercial song. It was as simple as that. I mean, there was no. I don't think we can really say he was a civil rights leader.
Yeah. No.
But I'm saying about you send me. We all know you read the Sonny Bono story. They said where Art Roop says to Blackwell and Cooke, "Get out of here! You can't do pop." But he'd already had 2 pop songs on Specialty. I mean, so the story kind of doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
And A Change Is Going to Come is a pretty, righteous record as well.
That's the one I'm referring to.
But that's long. That's way up.
That's way up there.
That's way up.
But I mean, he had a problem because you had an audience that basically had come there to see Little Richard.
Yeah.
And so Sam would close the first half of the show every night, and he'd have to work it, honey.
Did he rock?
Huh?
I mean, did he change his
swung.
material?
He swung.
Yeah, Sam Cooke swung.
Without a doubt. I mean, there was a journalist, and a very attractive English woman journalist, and it was the first time I have seen something that looked like a literal orgasm standing up. She watched him
Dr. Sam.
on stage because he was just magic.
Yeah. Don't discount Sam because he
I
had
never
it.
do. Well, I'm hoping to hold over Mr. Oldham for a second show if you got another half hour, and because it'll be next week. So, thanks very much for coming in.
Oh,
Thank
we're
you,
done.
Andrew Oldham, citizen of Columbia and Vancouver and the world.
It goes quick.
We will see you next time. Let's listen to what? Bye Bye Johnny? Is that what you got queued up?
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
Well, she drove